Welcome back to Two Wheel Testimony. Today I have a special guest. We go back to the genesis of like my motorcycle ministry background. We have one of my best friends here is Conrad. He's the president of Revelation Riderz motorcycle ministry, which I'm a part of, and the Revelation Ministries, right?
As a whole, yeah.
As a whole, and it includes like a car club and pretty much a whole. We have everything, right?
It's pretty much.
And so basically, Conrad and I got, God was just working one day. I was riding with some other group, and Bible study kept popping up because we had mutual friends.
Facebook friends
with his daughter, and it just like worked out. And it was, what was it, 2021 or 2020 when COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was doing absolutely nothing, and all of a sudden these videos started popping up, and it was just God working. And Conrad, his Bible study just spoke to me, and I was like, man, I got to pray because it keeps popping up. Like there's some reason God's trying to do something. And then I met with Conrad, and we ended up starting to kind of ride together. They were trying to make sure I was an okay person, and then the rest is history. I mean, if you want to add anything to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting that you bring it in that way, because that's pretty much the same way that a lot of people that have gotten into Revelation Ministries. I started doing this over 12 years ago in the biker ministry, and I've never. Well, you back up. It was one variation of it in the beginning, and then it evolved into Revelation Ministries, Revelation Riderz. I've always allowed God to work through the ministry and bring the people that are meant to be in the ministry to the ministry. Because if I search them out, I'm going to search out the wrong people, right? Because I'm going to do it through a humanistic, through a fleshly way. Whereas if I let God provide the increase, as he says, as his word says he will do, he does. I mean, that's like, if you listen to the way how you just explained how you got into it, that was all God that just led you to it.
Oh yeah.
Right. And he led you to the ministry. But for me, even a bigger deal for me is that he brought the brotherhood and the friendship between you and I to fruition.
Now we're family.
Yep. Amen.
What I want to do, I want to kind of talk about, the BC, the Conrad's BC before Christ. Feel free to go into any depth that you want. We're going to talk about, your life before Christ. I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I mean, you do a lot of these kind of discussions, these interviews with different people throughout the years, and I've always maintained the same thing. I will give you a summary of what my life was like, and I do it in a summary because my whole thing is my testimony is who God created me to be now. Mm-hmm. Not who I was before. And if we harp too much on the before, then I feel that we're giving the enemy the glorification and not God the glorification. So my testimony is who God has me as I am today, not where he brought me from.
Yeah.
But to give you a quick little synopsis of it, there was a time in my life where if my eyes were open and I was awake, I was probably drunk. And to combat that, I had a very healthy cocaine addiction. So I did one to counter the other for a long time. It's not a very inexpensive habit to have. So I went south for a long time, and I became what we used to call, or what we call now, a street pharmacist, to be able to supply that and to do the things we wanted to do to earn a living in all the wrong ways. Even going back before then, coming up as a child, as a youngster, getting involved in the neighborhood friendships, I'll call it that, gangs. I tried so many times through my life to change. Coming up, hanging out with the guys from the neighborhood, becoming a part of the neighborhood, and then kind of recognizing that it's not right. So you try to change. I try to be something different. I try to get into school and kind of change my trajectory there, and that goes good for a while, but the world comes back knocking on your door, and they'll knock you back. And it's been a long time through these years where you try so many times on your own to change, and it isn't until you give it to God and allow Him to change your circumstances where it actually sticks and you become the person that you become. I had a lot of angry issues when I was younger. You know, my mother was in and out of the hospital for most of my life. So I really hung on to my grandmother, my nana. You know, I spent a lot of time, a good majority of my younger life, bouncing back and forth, spending a lot of time with her. When she passed away of cancer, I kind of lost my moral compass in life. At that time, I was really trying to be something different. I was trying to, you know, I'm old school from the neighborhood. My Stacey Adams were creased up and ready to go. I tried to change from all that on my own. I got into sports. I got into ROTC in high school, and I tried to do everything I could to be different because I wanted to be different. And when she passed away, it all went away. I made that U-turn at Albuquerque, went back the other direction, went right back to the streets. I had family that were still doing the same thing that we, you know. So I got right back into it. I had no care really, because I lost the one thing that I was holding on to in life that I was trying to be better for. You know, one thing leads to another, and you just get into all kinds of things. And I really thank God because the things that I got into, the things that I did, there was a higher chance of me not being here than being here. Mm-hmm. And I used to tell people, and I used to really believe this, that I was too smart to ever get caught doing what I was doing. Mm-hmm. But when you get into the crux of things, you realize that it had nothing to do with me. You know, God was watching over me for such a time as this for me to be who I am today. He's the one that kept me out of trouble. I used to think I never got sleeved up and everything, so I always looked different. They never took me for a neighborhood drug dealer. Mm-hmm. I always carried a backpack, tried to be different. So I always thought I was too smart, but it wasn't that. It was God that protected me along the way. His plan for me. I tried everything I could to deviate from that plan, but He kept bringing me back, kept redirecting my path. But I don't want to get too much into anything else from those days, because I don't want to glorify it. That was a bad time in my life. It was done. It's over with. God changed my life. I gave my life to the Lord. I'm going to say it was probably completely about 18, 19 years ago. We had my wife and I had a small business we were doing on the side. I worked a regular job, but then we had a small business at the parking spot. We used to sell Mexican pottery. One of the security guards there, his name was Phil Shores. He was a Phoenix police detective, but he was also a pastor. Didn't know this at the time. You know, we were always trying to get away with something, mm-hmm. and it was their job to make sure that we didn't. So that's how we kind of met each other. And through the cat and mouse, it just became funny, and we became friends. And he decided to start up a church. His father, Phil Shores Sr., was one of the original pioneering pastors of Phoenix First Assembly, which everybody knows now, Dream City. That's the original Phoenix First Assembly. Mm. And Phil, when he started his church, he started it over, in Surprise and in Peoria. Now that church, when he started, it was called Church on the Rock. And we started. He said he was going to start it, and we said, we'll just go, because we were friends, and I will go support you. We went, and it just, God grabbed a hold of us then. I really dug in and started really getting into the Word, gave my life, was baptized, was studying with Phil for a long time, and then life happens. Mm-hmm. And we were there for a number of years, but then we had to relocate to Tucson. And we went there. We were there for about 5 or 6 years. Tried to stay into the church mode, but it's different when you go to a whole new city, a whole new. Mm-hmm. You keep trying, and we did for the most part. We found a good church, and we were going there for a while, but it just wasn't the same. Again, life happens. We end up finding ourselves coming back. When we came back, my wife's cousin was. We were all caught up in the same thing. We knew each other. We all knew each other from back in the day. But he gave his life to the Lord. He got caught up. He got shot up and went through a whole ordeal. But he was a part of Victory Outreach Church. And he had been in there for quite some time, quite a number of years. And when we moved back to Phoenix, he was starting to pioneer an offshoot in El Mirage. It was Victory Outreach West Valley, I think is what they called it. Mm-hmm. When we came back, we got into contact with each other, and we decided to go help him pioneer that church. So we began to build it. So we really kind of got into it again, and that's when I started getting into the whole biker ministry, because they have a rather huge biker ministry. They're called Riders Out of Darkness. And I went to a men's conference years ago when we were pioneering the church in El Mirage, and I met some I didn't know, and I met some of those guys. It was funny because God started connecting the dots. I love to ride. I've been riding since I was small, dirt bikes and everything else. And God, look, you could take a passion of yours and your passion for me and put them together and go out and spread my gospel. Yeah. So that's where that started, and that's what got me into the whole biker ministry. And I haven't. Life still happens, but I haven't looked back. I've never turned away from the calling that I feel God gave me with this. It's gone through a couple of variations along the way. Sometimes people, leadership, pastors, churches can get in the way and want to make things more about them or their particular church rather than about God and the gospel in the community. You go through a variation of things, and that's why we keep Revelation independent. We're a street ministry. Sometimes I think it's better that way, so that we don't get kind of penned in where you can only do this, you can only do that, you got to follow the church rules. The only rules I got to follow is what's in the Bible. If it's in there, we're good to go. If it's not in there, don't bring it to me because I'm going by God's word. Mm-hmm. You find a lot of churches that want to interject their beliefs, their ways, this and that. And like you take Revelation, for example, we all go to different churches, you know what I mean? But we come together as a ministry, sharing his gospel into our community, doing the best that we can, to save souls for him. If you contrast from where I was as a child, growing up and all the things, and to where I am now, when you talk about testimonies, it's a night and day lifestyle, and I can't really imagine where I would be if I didn't have God in my life. It's a lot simpler than it actually that people actually believe it is. Mm-hmm. We tend to make it more difficult on ourselves than it needs to be. I did that for a lot of years. Always thinking you have to clean up this, you got to change this, you got to change that, you got to change that before you can no.
I was gonna say we're too busy fronting, and we're trying to ride the fence, or we're not really being honest with ourselves. Like we're not submitting,
right?
So
that's a large target of who Revelation is trying to reach, is those people that are straddling the fence.
Yeah, you
got one foot in and one foot out. Yes, they believe, but they don't want the world to know they believe. It's like when they're behind closed doors or in a controlled environment. Yeah, I believe in God. I pray this and that. But you put out in the regular public, zip go the lips. They don't talk about God. They don't bring up God. They don't rejoice about God. They don't talk bad about him. But they might as well.
Don't say anything.
It's the same thing.
So what I want to get into now, I want to talk about a specific point, like if you can pinpoint a specific time when you heard God calling you.
There was a time, my wife and I have been together. We were just talking about this a little while ago too, going on 41 years. Yes, I'm that old. But when you think about it, we say 41 years because we've known each other since grade school, and we started, boyfriend and girlfriend really young. Mm-hmm. But through the course of all these years, we've had some serious issues, and it happens when you live outside of Christ. The world has a lot of influence on your life, and we make bad choices, bad decisions, do things that we normally wouldn't do. My wife and I have been through, well, let me put it this way, you name it, we've been through it. Any kind of issues in marriage and relationships, we've been through just about everything.
Yeah, you've been married a long time.
Through that, when we weren't living for the Lord, we're just living our lives, right? We had a lot of issues, and I had a lot of other things besides my marriage going south that were going south. And I was losing hope, and we were at the point where we were getting ready to separate. Well, she was getting ready to separate from me, and I just, I didn't handle it well, and I decided, you know what, I'm done. I'm tired of this. I can't do this no more. I don't know what to do. I made a decision. Well, I just don't want to be here no more. So I drove over to an old park by where we used to live. I parked over there and ingested a bunch of narcotics, not expecting to be here past that. I do not know how they found me, how they knew where I was. I remember parking there. I remember taking all of the drugs, and I was gone. But I woke up in the hospital. My wife was there, and after that, nothing really frightened me before until then, because had they not found me, I wouldn't be here. I just sat and I thought about that for a long time, and that's when I began to hear God talking to me. if I would seriously commit to him, I wouldn't have to go through all these things. Or to put it honestly, I wouldn't have to go through them alone. Nowhere does the Bible promises that we're not going to go through issues, that we're not going to have struggles, we're not going to have strife in our life. But he promises to always be with us and show us the way through it, right? Before then, I didn't have a guide. I didn't have someone to show me the way through or to lead me through it, or to give me the right thought process to get through it. I think it was from that point on when I really started to really get into the Word and seek after Him. Now, it still took a number of years because I didn't know how, I didn't know where. We were from the streets. We didn't. But that was the first time that I really felt that God was calling me, not calling me to a specific ministry or anything like that, but just my child. Listen to me. You don't have to go through that. You don't have to live that way. Just hear me. From there it just took off, and I just kept trying to find different ways to seek Him, and He began to lead me and guide me and lead me into the right directions. Even though I tried to, why you want me to go there? Because we look at it in our own mind, in our own mindset, and when we learn to just listen and obey, our lives become so much easier, so much better.
I wanna talk with you about the ministry, and we do a lot of, like you were saying earlier, we do a lot of secular kind of events. We're out with the people. We're not really, we do some stuff with the other Christian ministries, but we're pretty much out in the street. So I wanna hear what you have to say about like the impact that it has in the community. You have a wife and lovely kids, and how has that impacted it also, being in the ministry?
Mm-hmm. The ministry, it's like what I tell everybody when they come into Revelation. This ministry is a family ministry. Yes, it's a biker ministry, but what we seek to do is we seek to search out all walks of life, not just a biker ministry, not just a biker lifestyle. We have the car club as well. But just in general, we use the bikes, the cars. Those are just tools that we use. God blessed us with, some of us have some beautiful cars and beautiful bikes, and these are blessings from the Lord, and we turn around and use those to further His gospel out in the street. I think that the family orientation of the ministry has really benefited my individual family because it's drawn them all in. They're all a part of it. When I first started out 12, 13 years ago, my two boys were in the ministry. They didn't ride yet. They were getting ready to ride, but they haven't. My older boy, he started a relationship, started having children, and started building his life. My younger son is, he's cut from a different cloth. He's not. He's a part of the ministry. He likes being around. He comes around sometimes, but he's not a biker, and he's into other things, God, but his interests lie in other areas. My daughter, as you mentioned earlier, my daughter Cassandra has been a big part of the ministry ever since I started it. Her and my wife have been instrumental in helping build it and curate it. And when we first started, it was just my wife and I. I went to the thing when I came back. I said, sweetheart, let me tell you something. Let me tell you what I heard. God was talking to me, and she said, okay, well, that's it. If that's where God's leading you, let's go. And we started it, and we ran with it, and we've been doing it ever since. What I was saying is, we try to reach all walks of life. It's not just one. Our mission is to reach as many souls for Christ as we can. When we do that with the bikes and we go to these different events, one of the reasons that we broke away from being in one particular church is that it restricted us from going certain places. Like you said, we go to a lot of secular places. Mm-hmm. And I've been asked a lot of times, well, what is it exactly that you guys do? Sometimes we don't do anything. Sometimes, the Bible tells us, what did He say? He said, be still and know that I am God. So sometimes when we go places, just our mere presence speaks volumes. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows who we are, what we stand for, and why we're there. My belief is that we go places and we might not speak to everyone there. Someone might see us and we're bringing the presence of the Lord everywhere we go. And someone might see us at this place, they might not want to talk to us. And they're going to see us at the next event, and maybe a third event, and maybe a fourth event. And at that fourth event, he's going to say, okay, I keep seeing them. Why? Then they open up the door, and they allow us now to share the gospel with them. Mm-hmm. They open up the conversation. Sometimes we go to these events, we go to these secular car shows, and we take the bikes and we take the cars, and we set up our table. And we put our things out, and we just allow the public to come to us. And when they open that door, it allows us to share the gospel with them. That's the main thing that we do with the ministry.
I mean, it's been an absolute joy being in the ministry. My girls love it. Just being out there is just amazing. I mean, writing with you is awesome, I have to say. Let's just talk briefly. Like, say you were to tell somebody, about the gospel, like, or even like your younger self. Like, what would you tell your younger self, or somebody that doesn't know about God, about the good news?
Well, every conversation is different.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I've always said is that we're not a Bible thumping ministry, so we're not going to run out there and grab somebody by the shirt and say, "Brother, if you don't repent right now, you're going to go to hell." And we allow them to open themselves up to us, and then it allows us to share the gospel with them. 9 times out of 10, it's because they're struggling with something, and the conversation starts out with them asking us for prayer. We'll pray for whatever their need may be, a sick relative, maybe struggles in their marriage, maybe just them feeling lost, needing to find hope in life somewhere. That opens up the door for us, and we'll pray for them. I'll give you an example. When we were first starting out a while back, I don't know if you've ever met Raul. He's one of the original members. We met him through another friend, and the only reason that we met him was because he asked for prayer. And this is one of the examples that we use that we say that we know without a doubt that God is still a miracle working God. Because this is one example. Mm. He asked for prayer. He was diagnosed with cancer, and he was going through the whole process and everything. He asked for prayer a couple of times, and we weren't able to make it. And then we finally, we went over there, and we took the oil, we anointed him oil, we paid over him. All the guys went that were in the ministry at the time. We prayed over him. I'm going to say it was maybe a month and a half later. He contacted us and said that he just came from his doctor visit. His cancer was gone. To this day, it hasn't come back. And it's been, I'm going to say it's been 6 or 7 years now. That's one of the times that the door opened up and we were able to share the gospel. Now, he was already a believer. Mm-hmm. He went to church and everything. And, the fact that we were able to lay hands on him, anoint him with oil, and to see that outcome come to fruition is, for us, it's amazing, and it lets us know that we're going in the right direction and doing the right thing for him. But it's just one of many. So my wife is another, and we'll get into that in another time. But it's just people want to hear you tell them, that you walk up to somebody and you tell them a certain thing, give them a certain verse, and then you can turn them into. It doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes it's a process. And their exposure to you, people's exposure to us as a ministry, it draws them closer to God little by little. One of the things that I always say is that we're not always going to make an impact on the first visit or the first sight or the first meeting, but as they get to know us, they'll begin to feel and they'll begin to see Christ in us. Because like children, they learn from what they see more than what they hear. You can tell a child 1,000 times, don't do that. But until they see why you're telling them not to do that, they're not going to learn to not do that, right? So they learn more by what they see. You heard the term, people are a product of their environment. Mm-hmm. That's because people connect with what they see. You can hear how many podcasts, how many Bible studies, how many preachers are on TV, on the internet, everything, but people hear it every day. But until they see it, we live our lives according to the gospel. We do the best we can to live our life as Christ-like as possible, because the life that we live is the example that we set. I can tell them verse by verse in the Bible, but if they see me living a certain way, what are they going to learn from what they see? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, he says that, but look how he's living.
Exactly.
How many pastors have you seen that have been way up there and then they've fallen? Mm-hmm. They're spitting the word out and they're preaching the word, and they could put on a good show, but then you watch how they live their life. Like, well, he said that, but he's doing that. You know what I mean? It's more so the example that we set when we're, one of the biggest things that we have in our community is all the different Christian groups. We can't even get them together because this one doesn't like this one, or doesn't like somebody in this one, or don't. This group is caught up wanting to live in the Old Testament, the Old Covenant, and this group over here is living under the New Covenant, through Jesus Christ, which is where we all are in all reality. But some people get hung up wanting to still live through the Mosaic law, through the law of Moses. You know what I mean? We're not there anymore. We're in the new covenant with Jesus Christ. So how we live our lives speaks volumes. We can tell them everything that's in the Old Testament. You know, thou shalt not, on and on and on. But that's just telling them. God took on the form of man in Jesus Christ to come and show us the way, right? And to also usher in grace and forgiveness, because before then, that wasn't allotted to us, right? What was the penalty of sin in the Old Testament? Death. Stoned to death.
Yeah.
So now,
struck down by God.
We're struck down by God. So now in the new covenant through Jesus Christ, we're allotted forgiveness. You know, he took the punishment that was meant for us on Calvary to give us the ability to have salvation. We would have never gotten it through the old covenant in the Old Testament, because what does the Bible say? There's not one that was perfect, only one. There'll never be another. So we could never live up to those laws. We would have never lived up to those laws. We had to have Christ come to give us an avenue for our salvation. So I say all that to say there's not a specific conversation. There's not a specific way to approach someone. It's an organic thing that comes along, and God will always lead us in the right direction to lead them when the opportunity comes up. But that only comes up if we're living our lives correctly and living the example as best as possible. Doesn't mean we're not going to make mistakes. Doesn't mean we're not going to do something bad. I'll give you an example. One of the things that I struggle with to this day is a little bit of road rage. You know, you're driving someplace and somebody cuts you off. You're like, hey, God bless you, brother. You know what I mean? But it's kind of, I say that as a joke, but in reality, it's true. So we have to always be cognizant of the fact of how we live our lives, how people, we live our, especially, you know, leaders, like in how we live our lives, we live under a microscope. If you're a pastor, if you're a leader of a ministry, you're going to live under a microscope. Everybody's going to look at how the things you do. They're going to listen to what you say, but they're going to watch what you do. And that's how they're going to judge you, right? So to answer your question, there's not a whole lot of specific ways that we come at people. We allow God to lead us in those individual circumstances, depending on what the situation is.
Like you said, there's many different ways, and I mean, we're just pretty much planting seeds. You know, we don't always get to see that harvest, but we're called to plant those seeds at least, right? Yep.
Well, I mean, that's the thing with ministries like these. That, you know, if we stop and turn around and wait to see if that seed takes root and develops into something, well, we're shortchanging somebody else down the road. You know, we're called to be the seed planters. So we need to continue forward. Sometimes we're blessed and we come back full circle. We see somebody, hey, remember when we prayed for him 5 years ago? Look, you know, we get those blessings every now and then. But that's not what we're called to do. We're called to plant the seed. We're called to keep pushing forward and bringing Christ to the world and let God do the rest, right?
Amen. Well, my brother, anything you want to add about Revelation Riderz? I'm going to add the link in the description for the page. We have the Monday night Bible study, but want to speak on the Bible study or anything we got going on?
Well, other than that, I mean, you mentioned that we do have a Monday night Bible study. It's Monday night at 7 p.m. We do it live on our Revelation Riderz page on Facebook. So if you guys, you know, you have opportunity, tune in one day. Even if not, you can go to our webpage, at least for now. I think they're going to be taking a lot of them off, but there's hundreds of videos in there that you can go and just scroll through and pick them up. A lot of them have titles, different things, different topics that we talk about with the study. I always try to let the Lord lead me in what the story is going to be about for that week. There's been a couple of times where we've done a 2 or 3 week study. Three part study, but for the most part, I always try to just tend to allow the Lord to lead us of what we're going through. Something happened in the world or something happened in our community, something going on with me or someone close to me. We'll bring that around, and that's what the study will be based on. You know, it's kind of a different study. I try to tailor it to how we could apply God's word to our lives today, not necessarily just, hey, learn these scriptures and this is, you know, I want you to be able to understand it and apply it to your life of what you're going through right now. And so we kind of look at it a little bit different. But, you know, hey, tune in, see if it works for you. Yeah. Invite a friend.
Yeah, it's been a blessing to me, and I know it's a blessing for you, you know, and the community. So that's going to wrap it up for now, and we'll see you guys next time. God radiating from her. You know, it was like, man, this is a woman of God. Like she's willing to help with anything you need help with. She'll talk to you. She'll tell you.
It's pretty scary. And growing up in that, just you just don't understand really what safe is because your own house